Hello, everyone, and welcome back at long last to another episode of Songsmith. Today, we're going to be talking about what makes a song good. Obviously, that's kind of objective. There's different opinions on what is good for certain people. But in general, as a rule of thumb, what makes a song across the board good, lyrically, melodically, etc. I'm excited to dive into this. It's actually going to be a two-part episode, so hang in with me. We've got a lot to unpack. And as always, let's dive right in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Songsmith. I'm your host, Keaton Williamson, and my goal is to help equip you to be the best musician you can be. The purpose of this show is to give you the knowledge it takes to be a successful songwriter, producer, and indie artist, while also honoring God in whatever music you create. We all want to be successful in this crowded space, so join me as we explore what it takes to be a songsmith. So, as a little recap or refresher, first off, if you don't know, a couple weeks ago or a week ago, I'm not exactly sure based on when this actually releases, but I released a bit of an episode just saying, hey, we're back. The show is not dead. It just took a bit of a break. So we're back, and if you want to hear just a couple of things that I did over the summer and the last couple of months after the school year started, well, it is just kind of me rambling. If you're interested in hearing that, I'd love to have you hop on over there. But if not, you can stick around on here. I definitely don't want you to leave because we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today. If you're not keeping track, or if you are, either way, this is episode 13. And as I said, we are going to be talking about what makes a song good. In fact, the title that I have on our outline right here is What Makes a Song Good, Part 1. So episode 14 will be Part 2. Basically, we're going to unpack some 4 main things. I believe it's 4 anyway. First off is the idea, lyrics, melody, structure, and then in part 2, let me find that outline real quick. The role of music in song, the art of arrangement, and production. And yes, if some of those sound kind of AI generated, it's because the headers are. I had it just kind of clean up my notes and ChatGPT, went away with it. But anyway, it added some interesting headers for some of those. But either way, those are some of the main things we're going to be talking about. I think that was 6 or 7, but yeah, it's going to be for some good episodes. First and foremost, we've talked about the idea for songs a lot on this show. I think episode 4 is I have an idea or whatever, and it's been a repeated theme since. The idea is crucial to a good song. If you don't really have a solid foundation as to, first off, what you're writing about, but second, just if it's not a good song, like the idea is just bleh, then it's going to reflect in your music. It's kind of like, where's a good example? Oh, yeah. If you're a bad guitar player, I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying if you are a bad guitar player and you just crank up a ton of effects and distortion and stuff, it might mask the bad playing, but it's still a bad guitar player at its core. So, again, that's kind of maybe a bad analogy. Maybe you don't like that. But either way, if your idea, the core central part of your song is not very good, very strong, etc., then it's going to fall apart pretty quickly. So, obviously, I'll basically do a recap of that episode. First and foremost, the idea is that backbone of your song. It expands all of these different ideas into the different sections. Like, oftentimes the chorus will talk about the main concept you have in mind or give you a very clear example of it. I should have had an example offhand. However, some ideas might be heartbreak. How about that? That's a pretty common one in songs. So the chorus might be, I'm so sad, we broke up, la la la, la la la. And then the verse might expand upon that saying like, stories of good times and now they're gone. And you know what I mean. You know exactly what I mean. I know you do. So that kind of expands upon the idea. It gives context and gives you more stuff. And sometimes, I don't know, a bridge might be talking about how I wish we could get back together and yada yada. And even if you don't, it was a good time. And yeah, it's expanding the idea. Each part plays a central role in explaining the idea that you are trying to tell your listener, whether that's a story or a concept. That's kind of generally how a song works. It's important to influence each of those parts because if you don't have a clear goal or thing you're writing in mind, you're going to go off on tangent after tangent, and then eventually you're like, what is this song even about? Because I've done that several times. And sometimes it's okay if things aren't super defined in the idea stage. For instance, you might say you want something like the topic of, I don't know, pain. And you can kind of check what lens you want to take. Or not check. You can see what angle you want to take at that as you're writing the song. But in as a general rule of thumb, I would say having a solid idea and having a clear goal in mind for this is what I want to tell my listeners through the song is pretty important. Some of the things you might think about when developing your idea, and again, I'll have you go over to episode 4 if you want to get a bit more in the weeds with this, but some of the things to think about are what kind of emotions do you want your listener to feel? Do you want them to feel excited and happy? Is this like a pump me up type of song? We're getting excited. Is it a workout song where it's like, da-da-da-da-da? That's not any. Ignore that. Do you want them to feel sad? Do you want to feel like heartbreak? Like, ouch, that hurt. Kind of like a sad song. Why does this keep getting brought up? Moving on, other things that you could think of are like empathy or relatability, like anxiety. Jonny Diaz, I think that's how you say it. Breathe, where it's like 90 miles an hour, going fast as I can. Try to push a little harder, try to get the upper hand. Feeling like I'm falling behind. It's a crazy life. Definitely not on key there. But anyway, that verse is very like. You hear that constant click, 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 boom, boom, boom. And then it gets to the chorus and it's just like, breathe, just breathe. Come and rest at my feet. And so on and so forth. And it's literally like the da, da, da. Those are supposed to be the piano chords, you know. I'm really professional right here. So the verses are giving this very like dun 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 dun, moving. We're just going fast. And then you get to the chorus and it's just like stop. Quite literally, breathe. Obviously, it's giving you that moment of rest. Like your mind registers with that because you hear the just slowing everything down. It's stripped down to literally vocals, chords, and maybe some pads or something. It's really simple. He's obviously trying to convey this like anxious, like we're always going, and then the chorus is just like stop, breathe. That's an example of some of the feelings that you could have in a song, but sometimes it's just like a pump me up song. It's like super fun, you know, party songs, stuff you might play at like homecoming or whatever. Tons of different emotions you can tap into, and sometimes you can get really specific with the kind of things you're trying to do, or like relate your experience to somebody else. Empathy right there. You're giving them a situation that they can relate to, and that's kind of what Breathe does with the busy, going fast as I can, yada, yada, yada. So doing that, thinking about the kind of things you want your listener to be feeling as they're listening to your song and how it moves them through it. Because oftentimes in a song, it's progressing through things. The verse is leading to the chorus. Again, I'll just continue on this example of Breathe. It is moving with this anxious, like, I'm going to break under moving so fast and not stopping. And then it's just breathe. And you just stop. And it's just quiet. Kind of like this. It's not over the top. It's just is. And then you start to pick it up to another example of how things start to get faster as it gets out of control. And then you're realizing you're back in the same loop and you're moving and you're moving and you're moving and you're moving. And then it's stop. Stop again. Just breathe. And then it goes into the chorus, which is another energetic part, but it's optimistically energetic. It goes to fill your lungs, grace of God, and overcome. Just breathe. Just breathe. Let your weary soul find rest. Lay down what's good and find what's best. And just breathe. Just breathe. I just realized that's not a bridge. That's just an alternate version of the chorus. But the point still stands. It gets to this optimistic, like, it's energy, but in a good way. You're moving your listener through the song with different feelings. And there's lots of different ways, but I'll stop rambling on this idea because either you understand it by now or I'll point you back to that episode 4, be in the description, show notes. Don't know how to find them. Look up on Google how to find show notes for X, Y, or Z platform. Pretty simple. But with that being said, idea, if you didn't understand by now, is the backbone of the song. It is core and crucial to having a whole strong song. It's the foundation, and without it, things start to kind of drift most of the time. Lyrics and melody. Now, songs have a lot to do with music, if you didn't already know. And lyrics and melody, I was originally going to have these as two separate points, but then I'm like, first off, I don't know enough about like crafting melodies in the specifics in terms of like, this thing in music theory is how you make this sound good, and yada yada. And let's be honest, most of us aren't pulling out our music theory textbooks that I don't have because I've never taken a music theory class. You don't need music theory to be a songwriter. It might be helpful, but you don't need it. So they can kind of tie together a lot of the times, and this is normally how I do it. But first and foremost, the role of the lyric is basically to tell the story of your song. One thing that you have to be so crucial with, and one side note, so lyrics don't have to have music to them. Lyrics, in essence, are just words, the words of your song. Sometimes you literally just have a lyricist who basically is writing a poem, and then you work with somebody who's really good at melody and putting that to music. They're not always done simultaneously. I mean, they might have a bit of music to the idea. They have a bit of a beat or tempo. What's the word I'm looking for? I took one poetry class. Yeah, I can't remember. It's killing me. Anyway, it can have a bit of music to it, but sometimes you might have someone who's really just a lyricist, and they're not too focused on the musical aspect of it, and more so just, this is kind of what I'm wanting to say out of it. These are the words. This has got a consistent beat, rhythm. Like, you have something to work with, structure, but then you bring it to, or you're in a co-write and you're working with somebody who is really good at developing melodies that are hooky and catchy, and like, you listen to it and it's like, yeah, this is fun to listen to or engaging. So they're not used interchangeably. These are two distinct things in songwriting. But back to the point of the lyric. Obviously, in different parts of the song, it'll be used in different ways, but in essence, it's basically telling the story of your song, whether that's explaining a topic, telling a story, yada yada. Again, these aren't new concepts. We kind of understand this at this point. But one really big thing you want to avoid, is using bland words. You don't want something that's like, for instance, here's one of my examples on the outline. I was on top of the world until you sent me crashing down. Let's try that again, because that was the better version. You don't want to say something like, I was up, but now I'm down. Forrest Frank, Connor Price. No. If it's like a song where you're like broken down or something, obviously they do a good job with that song or whatever. But if you just said like your emotions are like, I was sad, but now I'm happy, or I'm happy, now I'm sad, you need to add some depth to it. And sometimes it can be a simple, fun song like, I was down, but now I'm up, ba-da-da-da-da. Like, it's got good melody, and it's just meant to be a fun, happy song. However, if you want something that's got some depth to it, especially if you're writing something that's meant to convey a little bit more of a story, you want to add context. You want to add extra stuff to it, kind of descriptive words, for instance. So back to that example I didn't mean to say earlier, but I said anyway. You could use something like, instead of being, I was super happy and now I'm sad, you could do, I was on top of the world until you sent me crashing down. I have a cold, by the way, so please ignore the bad singing and the fact that I'm just not a professional or very good. But yeah, anyway, give it strong imagery, give it strong direction. You're trying to explain to your listener what is happening. Obviously, they could get the gist of it by those examples of just like, I was up, but now I'm down. But if you can give them something that really like adds, for instance, it's drawing examples. I was on top of the world. Obviously, that's kind of imagery. You're not actually on top of the world, and you never were coming crashing down, but it's giving you that idea and feeling, and people can kind of understand, oh, okay, I kind of get what he's going for. It's also important to find the right melody, experiment with different things. So let me set down the outline and kind of talk from, not the script or the paper. It's not scripted, I just talk. Most of the time, melodies, for me anyway, and for I know a lot of people, are just coming up with fun little catchy things. You're just like da 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 da, humming around, having a good time, messing around until you stumble across something you like. If you really want to be specific, you can jump on the keyboard, or if you're really experienced in like finger picking, like up and down scales and everything, go right ahead, be my guest. But a lot of the times, it's just kind of like, again, what is the emotion? What's the feeling you want to convey? Is it a very happy song? Is it upbeat? Is it a little mysterious? Is it sad? And kind of think about, okay, what kind of music sound is in that? A lot of times, I will sometimes look up, say, I want a song that sounds a particular way, such as enthusiastic, and I Google, not gurgle, I Google enthusiastic keys in terms of like keys C, G, A, all these different keys of music. And it might give me E. In fact, it has given me E when I've looked up stuff like that before. Or some minor key for a sad type of song. And you can start taking that and then look at some chords and some different things that are in there to create a sort of feeling. So you can mess around in that way in terms of like putting together a chord progression and building a melody out of that. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. And I'm sorry if I'm being very not good at directing stuff. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of different ways you can go about creating a melody. Let me give you some examples from the top of my head. If we go back to that thing where it's like, I was on top of the world until you sent me crashing down. That's good. That's fun. There's nothing bad with it. But you could take a bit of a different tone with like maybe an EDM song. I was on top of the world till you sent me crashing down. That's my beat drop right there, and I'm going to stop before I'm weird. We all know this. So yeah, you can take different feelings with the same words and put them in different ways, yada yada. Sometimes, you know what, I'm going to stop there. I'm not a music theory expert. Disclaimer. If you didn't already know that, which I really hope you did. But yeah, lots of different things you can do, and there's a lot of people that know a lot more than I do. So if you want to do that kind of stuff, look up YouTube. There's honestly some pretty good things out there if you really want to get into the nitty gritty. But a lot of the times, humming around, messing around until you find something that fits and works with the vibe you're going for can be what really takes it to the direction you want it to be in. The next thing is structure. Now, I believe I have an episode outlined. Yes, I believe I do. Somewhere in Google Drive for talking about the parts of how each part of a song works. Well, or maybe that's in this outline. Maybe I'm losing my mind. But either way, each part of the song structure serves a purpose. And we've talked about this a little bit before on the show, but basically, long story short, you have some main things that you're going to be working with in any given song. First off, you have the verses. That's pretty much like the in-betweenies of the choruses. And if you don't know these terms, I mean, most of the time people do, but if you don't know these terms, it's basically just how the song is broken up. The chorus is oftentimes the part that's repeated, that's got the hook, that's the part everybody remembers of a song, if they remember nothing else. Some other things that you might have are your bridge, alternative chorus, intro, interlude, and outro. So we'll just walk through each of these and kind of talk about how each of them play into the way the song that works, the way that it sounds. First off, obviously the way a strong song is structured heavily impacts the way that it is perceived. So, for instance, there's a song called Great Are You, Lord. You might have heard of it before by David Leonard. You might have even sung it in church before. Great are you, Lord. So, yeah, you might have heard of it before. Pretty popular. Anyway, sometimes in the recording, it's normally like, you give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs. And then you go through the chorus. But sometimes in churches, and our church sometimes does this, which I prefer the other way, but whatever. They'll do the verse twice in a row. Like the exact same verse one over twice, and then go into the chorus. So that kind of impacts the flow, whereas it moves a little bit faster into like this main feeling of the song, the main part of the song. So the structure, there's lots of different ways you can weigh it out. Traditionally, you'll have like verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. That's one of the ways you can do it. Some people do verse, chorus, or verse, chorus, verse, chorus. And if this is being confusing, basically, traditionally, you start with the verse and go to a chorus. And sometimes you might have the chorus at the beginning or like half a chorus. I know that happens a lot where it's kind of like gives you the hook. What's a good example? Yeah, I don't have one off the top of my head, but there's a lot of songs out there where it'll start with the chorus or a little bit of the chorus, and then jump into the verses. So that's kind of how that can sometimes work. In terms of how each of these things work, because as you know a little bit more about them, it might make sense as to how they do different things in the song. The chorus is, again, telling the main idea of your song. This is kind of explaining the main topic, whether it's a story or emotion, or, in fact, actually, the chorus isn't even the story. Normally, at the heart of any story you're trying to tell in a song, there's a main point, like Bound to Break by Jordan Blaine. We'll do that. In the chorus, it's like, all the walls around me feel unsteady, the ground is paper thin. All these warning signs, is this caution tape? Do I even care? Oh, I'm so afraid that I'm building something bound to break. Am I building something bound to break? That's actually a really bad example. It doesn't tell a story. We'll do another one. I'm so happy that we broke up. In the chorus, it kind of talks about how breaking up was honestly a lot better for him because of the relationship. The fact of the matter was that it wasn't great. In the verses, it tells some different stories of things that him and his significant other had done, things they went to, and how it was kind of like this constant tug and pull. It was never like meeting in the middle kind of thing. And then the chorus is just like, here's the fact of the matter. Breaking up was a good idea, and I'm happy that we broke up. Not in like a mean way, obviously, but it needed to happen. So that's kind of how the song works. The chorus is telling you the main point of the song. It's getting through all the weeds, and it's just like, here's the fact of the matter. You don't have to do it that way. You can do it in a bit more of a mysterious something or other, but traditionally the chorus, at the very least, is telling you the main point of the song, whether it's doing it in a mysterious fashion or really easy to decipher, here's it point blank to your face. The verses then expound upon that. Sometimes they're expounding upon the main point you're trying to tell, whether, again, that's through stories, through different things being said, examples, etc. Or, that's basically what it does. I feel like I'm rambling now. It typically just takes the thing you're talking about in the chorus and maybe brings it in some more specific, direct directions of how that applies and how that's being shown. Again, if it's a story in real life, things that actually happened with, or just application in general. Kind of taking that and expanding it into some very specific or tangible directions, not just the main point, but tangents of that. A great example of this, I actually have this one on my paper, so I do know it was a good example, not something off the top of my head, is Garden King by Sam Bowman. In fact, I featured that song on one of the episodes back in the past. I don't remember which one it was. But the way that one works is that in the chorus, it's like, Eon to eon, you are king, conquering ruler of everything. Armies of heaven, hosts of men, no one among them can stay your hand. Don't judge, please. Yeah, so the chorus. God is good. Eon to eon, he is king. That thing. But in the verses, it's talking about a story showing that exact example, and that is of King Nebuchadnezzar, Babylonian king. Kind of not a great king. He was a bit wicked, but we know that God still used him. He was still used, and he saved the lives of people after he almost killed them. So yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah, the verses are talking about the actual story of that song. It's the story is a representation of how God is king and sovereign over all. Definitely check out the song if you have a moment. Definitely, it's a good song. The whole album's great, but definitely check out that song if you have a moment. I'll make sure to link that in the description, as I will everything else, hopefully, referenced in this episode so far. Yeah, the next part to talk about is a bridge. The bridge of a song. Normally, but first off, sonically, the way that it is working is typically to break up the boom, boom, like A, B, A, B, A representing verses and chorus. So you have like chorus, verse, other way around. Verse, chorus, verse, chorus. And if you did another verse, which some songs do, there's still great songs like 10,000 Reasons doesn't have technically a bridge. However, However, the verse chorus, normally those stay consistent in melody, even if the words change from each piece, and it gets a little repetitive. So one time you'll hear it, second time you hear it, it's like starting to get into your head. Third time, it's like, okay, it's there and maybe a little bit too much. You need something to break it up, and that's where the bridge comes in. It gives you a different mood, a different vibe, different melody. It's the oddball of the group, but it's there for a reason, and it really does serve its purpose. Sometimes it's kind of a reinstatement of things already said in the song. Sometimes it takes it in a whole new direction. Like, why am I blanking on all the examples? I have like thousands of songs I actually know, and I can't think of one that has I can't think of a good example off the top of my head. But either way, any song that you have a bridge, you'll typically hear the difference. Sometimes there's even a key change, but that's more of an oddball. That's not always the case. Normally, it's just giving you a different melody, different words, sometimes a bit of a different thought related to the main topic to just freshen things up and make it not so repetitive. And then traditionally, it'll go into either a really big chorus, if the bridge was building up to that, or the bridge was the big thing, and then it goes down to a very chill, let's like ease you out of the song chorus. But either way, it's that breakup between the repetitiveness of verse, chorus, or pre-choruses thrown in there. And that's actually the next thing I'm going to talk about, because I don't have that on my paper. Pre-choruses. These are before the chorus. Mind blown! Basically, how they serve is just to bring the listener from being, in the verse and more easily transition them into the chorus. Sometimes this type of thing is baked into the verse, like the way that the melody is structured and the words. You have it where it just flows easily from one to the next. But sometimes it's not that way, and the song might need something, or you might want something in the song that makes that transition not so harsh. Like in God's Not Dead. It's like, let love explode and bring the dead to life. Love so bold to see a revolution somehow. How? And this is where the pre-chorus would start. I'm lost in your freedom. In this world I'll overcome. Chorus. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely... Yeah, so I actually said pre-chorus too soon. It's after my God's not dead, he's surely alive. That's when the chorus starts. It transitioned things a little bit better, because it's like, let love explode and bring the dead to life. A love so bold to see a revolution somehow. And then if it went into... he's living on the inside, roaring like a lion, God's not dead. It'd be kind of an abrupt change. And yes, I did just have to think about that. But adding that, like, don't, bum, bum, da 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 do, da da da, oh, 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 oh. You probably think I'm so weird right now. It just helps make things a little bit smoother, and it pieces things together better. It makes for a more of a seamless transition. And sometimes people do want a very harsh, like, this is the verse and this is the chorus, and it serves the song well. And sometimes you want something that's a little bit more of a transition piece between the two, causing it to not be so abrupt. A couple other things I want to throw in here of structure are your intros, interludes, and outros. These are normally music, just straight up music, with sometimes there being a few words. Sometimes it's we'll not even talk about reprises. Reprises are just basically a toned down version of another part of the song. But these three specifically, I'm talking in the musical transition part. And that is where, again, it's just kind of ushering you from one point to another. And sometimes these interludes act as those pre-choruses, or post-chorus actually, where it kind of goes from the end of the chorus, which might be really big, back into a verse, which is more mellow. The interlude is acting as a way to kind of bring the music down before the words start again. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Just creating a bit of a musical bit that transitions you back into the mood of the next portion of the song. Intros and outros, there's a lot of different things you can do with them. Sometimes people throw in some talking or words into these, but These are mainly music parts, which just more or less introduce you to the song. Sometimes it's just like a bit of a something or other. I don't know. Like if you don't want the words to start away, right away, intros are very common. We'll do Your Love Never Fails by Newsboys. It's literally some music of them going, oh, whoa, 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 and then it repeats that, and then it goes into the verse. So it just gives you a little bit of something. It kind of builds hype too, especially for certain songs. Other songs, it might be like a little piano piece, just setting the mood before words start in. Tons of different things you can do with those. Just generally, that's how that works. Outro, sometimes it's an abrupt ending still, but it just kind of lets you off of the words and gives you a second to listen to some music. Sometimes it's a bit of a fade, so the music is just playing on loop or whatever you want to call it until it just fades out and the song's over. That's kind of how those work. And as you're kind of probably starting to see, hopefully, each of these serve a different purpose and use in the song. And aside from intro and outro, those are kind of there where they stay. But everything else can almost be rearranged in any way you want. Like you could throw, traditionally you have verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. If you really wanted to, you could do verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus. Or, I don't know, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, verse. I don't know. That's a little bit out there. But you can take the ways that these are supposed to make your listeners feel and basically translate that into, okay, if this part makes person feel this way, then arranging these two parts in this way will make that person feel that way. That sounds very technical and stuff like that, but really, it's not that difficult. A lot of times, if you start by just that basic VC, BC, or verse, chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, you can kind of then start to experiment with songs after that and be like, okay, I know how this kind of works. I want to add a little bit more depth to it, so I'll add another verse in here. Or I want to add an alternate chorus because I want things to be a little bit different than they were. Sometimes it's just like a twist on the original words. Sometimes it's a different melody somewhat. Lots of different things you can do with that. It's just all thinking about what's the main thing you want someone to feel and how do you want to move them through that song, because that structure is very crucial to not only telling the story, but moving through them through the song with the ways that they think about it and the feelings they have in a specific way. So, in conclusion, what makes a good song, at least for part one? First off, foundationally, you need to have a good idea. If you don't have a good foundation to work off of, then it's going to all crumble and you don't have much direction during the writing process. And in turn, the listener will be like, what is this song actually about? I mean, sometimes you have those just dumb fun songs where you just listen and pump along. But most of the time, there's at least something behind it, even if you're not listening to the words. And if anybody takes a listen, they might notice that, hey, this doesn't really have a direction. So, idea, foundation. You want to learn more? Listen to episode 4. Second off, lyrics and melody. If you don't have an engaging melody, if you don't have something that's interesting and hooks people, you want something that's like, ooh, this is interesting, or a lyric that's like, ooh, yeah. Normally those are like the end of the song, chorus. But if you don't have something that really hooks people and gets them into it and they're like, oh yeah, this is something that really sticks in my head, then it's going to fade fast. And this, again, goes in any genre. It's not exclusive to one or another, but having that good thing that draws them in and it's like, okay, I like the sound of that, or that word like really sticks in my head and I want to listen to it again. That's kind of a very important part. And of course, structure helps communicate the exact thing that you're looking for, whether it's the message that you're trying to like emphasize something more over another, like the story compared just to the topic, or vice versa. Lots of different things. You want to guide your listener through a journey when they're listening to your song. And that sounds really like spiritual and da-da-da, and I'm not getting at that. I'm just trying to say that like when they're listening to your song, it's going to take them somewhere. Where are you taking them? What are you having them feel? What are the things you want them to think about when they're listening to this piece of music? Or is it just something where they're supposed to have fun and they're going to feel fun this way in the verse and fun that way in the chorus? Those are things that you don't have to give like hours of thought to for each song, but just kind of have it in the back of your mind. How are we traveling through this song? Those are some of the things that you'll find in just about every quote-unquote good song. Most songs that people think are good, and a lot of artists who are popular and have made a lot of money as artists today know these things. They understand that it's important to have these parts of your song nailed down, and when they don't do that, or when others don't do that, normally you do kind of see that. It's not as memorable as certain other songs. So thinking about these things, having them in the back of your mind so that as you're moving through it, you have something to work with is very important. So yeah. But with that being said, the next episode is about the same topic. We've got a couple other things to talk about. As a refresher, we'll be going over the role of music in a song in terms of like the instrumentation and what you're doing production-wise, whatever else, depending on if you're doing it or somebody else is doing it, that doesn't really matter. The art of arrangement, again, an AI-generated topic title, but basically kind of how you move these different parts of the music together, whether it's instrumentation, so again, the role of music, but also like your, rhyming patterns and intros and outros, and kind of talking a bit more in depth about that. And of course, production. Production is very similar to the role of music. It all is kind of talking about the music side, whereas the first is about writing, the second is about producing and adding music to it. But with that being said, let's jump into the discussion question real quick. Today, I want to ask you guys, what part of the process is probably the hardest for you? Is there a certain portion that you're like, this is where I always get stuck? Or is there a part that you're like, yes, this is what I enjoy the most? Maybe that is how you lay out the song or writing the verse specifically. Because a lot of people are good at one part of writing a song, but they might need somebody else that's a little bit better at writing another part of the song. So if there's one that you think is cooler or not as cool, let me know. And of course, if there's something that you're really struggling with in the songwriting process, also drop that in here in the comments so we can talk about that and maybe start a discussion and maybe get you in a place where you're not struggling as much with that. Maybe I can help you out. And of course, we've now come to the end of episode 13 and the reboot of Songsmith, our new season, I guess. As I've said a couple times already, I'd love to have you comment on Spotify, YouTube, or just get connected with me regardless of where you're listening. If you're enjoying the show so far, or if you'd like to hear more stuff, follow on what platform you're on, whether that's subscribing on YouTube, following on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or whatever other platform that you're listening on. I'd love to hear what episodes you'd like me to cover in the next coming episodes. While I do have a couple lined up, maybe one of those is something you want to hear, or you want me to move something in and get it fast-tracked. If somebody's asking for something really badly, I might just do that. So if there's a topic you're struggling with or want to know more about, I'd love to talk about it so long as I know something about it. So let that be known in the comments below or on Instagram, DMing me, whatever else. Whatever's the best way of contacting me, all that information is down in the show notes / description below. Stay tuned for part 2. As I said, we're going to be talking more about this, and that will be in 1 to 2 weeks, just depending on how I have to schedule out these episodes. But I cannot wait to have you guys back. I'm excited to be back on the show. And as always, keep on writing. And now for a preview of some of the things we shall be covering next episode, for those who were dedicated enough to listen to this far. The rule of music in a song. Music is just as integral as lyrics. Learn to balance both. Understanding how music conveys the feeling and atmosphere of the song, and the importance of music matching the vibe and message. The art of arrangement. Basically, it's talking about the traditional arrangements of A, B, A, C, yada, 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 versus breaking the mold for creative effect. How different arrangements can affect how the listener perceives the song. And yes, these are bullet point notes, so it may not make sense when I'm just rambling them off. And just talking about how the tension and release of intros, interludes, and choruses are important. Yada, yada, yada. Production, yada, yada. It never fixes anything. The core of the song is important. Listen to this episode again if you don't have that through your head. And of course, in conclusion, remember, music is to enhance, not to fix. We will talk about that more next episode. Anyway, I cannot wait to hear you on that episode. And it wants me to say again, comment on Spotify, like, follow, and share. Submit episode ideas if you want me to cover them. And of course, thank the audience for thank you again for tuning in to this episode. See you all later. Ta-ta!